thank you everyone for joining me here on the High Ground podcast. I'm super excited today because we are talking about Luke Skywalker, who I love very dearly, and I'm stoked to have you guys here on the podcast because you know, like I mentioned before, both Max and Element, you guys are two of the people that inspired me to start creating content, and I've followed Master North for a long time. So I'm excited to jump into it and start talking about the man, the myth, the legend. But to get started, I want to first have everyone go around, kind of introduce yourself. So, who are you? What's your history with Star Wars? And what is about Luke? What makes Luke special? So I will go to Max first.
Hi, my name is Max. I Kohm on TikTok and also other things, I guess. History with Star Wars. I was thrown into the opening night of Revenge of the Sith in 2005. And unbeknownst to me, it would change my life. And then I've been sort of reading and consuming Star Wars ever since then. And I'm super excited to be here. What is it about Luke? I think that his hero's journey is super interesting in the original trilogy. And there's stuff in Legends, but if we're talking like strictly canon, I think it's the fact that he is like a human and that we can all sort of see ourselves in him.
Yeah, it's so like he was such an everyman when he was introduced. You know what I mean? He was all of us being a whiny little brat. Um, Element, your thoughts?
I'm Element. Thanks for having me again, Choco. And as you mentioned, who inspired you? Kohm was actually one of the first people that I saw that actually inspired me to start as well.
My heart.
It's an honor to be on the podcast with everyone here. I think being here previously, everyone kind of knows who I am now. I'm Element7 _ Element7 _. And I've said this spiel before. My brother showed me A New Hope when I was a little kid. And I've mentioned this in your Twitch chat in your previous episodes prior to this. The moment Obi-Wan said, it was as if a million voices cried out in terror and then just went silent. I was like, what is this? I really need to know what the Force is. And then I just went full bore on Star Wars after that. My favorite Luke moment, definitely in The Last Jedi, staring down the First Order, and just that whole Force projection moment, and kind of exemplifying everything that a Jedi should have been. And going off of what Kohm mentioned about like being human, he's actually like the amalgamation of all of the greatest things about a Jedi, like Qui-Gon's acceptance of the will of the Force and his kind of awareness of not getting lost in the doctrines. And that happens in The Last Jedi, but also it's kind of like he has Obi-Wan's also very, very realistic teaching method. And just in that moment, you kind of see like the culmination of his training and the culmination of what he learned from his failure, his only true failure from the movies.
I like it. And we got Master North, last but certainly not least. Yeah, who are you? How'd you get into Star Wars? And what's it about Luke?
So my name's Cole, Master North on TikTok, and I'm 19 years old. I first got into Star Wars when I went to see the Clone Wars movie, actually, in theaters. And that was the first time I ever saw Star Wars, so I thought it was the greatest thing ever. But then that day, I went home and I started the original trilogy and I watched A New Hope, and I just immediately fell in love with Luke, and he became my favorite character. It was just something about him from a very young age. I was able to relate to him, and I even read the comics, all that, and it was just this epic character that I related to. And he had a perfect hero's journey, I believed, in the first trilogy. And then even going on into the sequel trilogy, I always thought Mark Hamill just delivered the greatest performances in all of Star Wars. And not even just Star Wars. His performances in everything he does are amazing. So just about anything that he does, I typically love. And there's more I'd like to get into about Luke's character, but I'm not going to go on for too long now.
Yeah, we'll dig deep into it.
Yeah.
And then yeah, everyone knows me watching this movie over and over and over again. And I do agree. Luke did have the perfect hero's journey, but for me, it was my first experience with the hero's journey was Luke Skywalker. And you can't forget your first, right? That sounded weird, but but you know what I mean. And it's just always impacted me. And then Element jumped into it a little bit, but I also wanted to go around separately to get your favorite Luke Skywalker moment. But
Oh, whoops.
no worries, no worries. Um, it's Carrie Fisher's. It's her birthday today, so let's also share our favorite Leia moment as well. And I'll go to Element first.
My favorite Leia moment, there's actually two moments. It's the beginning and the end of her journey. The beginning is in A New Hope when everyone's trying to rescue her and she's just like, "What the hell are you guys doing?" She takes the blaster from Han or Luke, I don't remember. And she's like, "I'll just save myself." And then at the end of her journey is when she reaches out to Ben and finally like is the catalyst that brings him finally back to the light. And it's a huge moment because I think we all know that he's been in the darkness since birth, and Luke tries to find the light, and that's why he goes there. But the moment he sees the light is the moment Leia finally like reaches back out to him, right? Because she ended her Jedi training because she saw a vision that at the end of it would be the death of her son. Well, in fact, at the end of her Jedi path, it was the death of her son, but it was Kylo, not Ben. And
Yeah.
so, like the symbolatry in that was just like compelling as ever. And so, those two moments are my favorite Leia moments.
All right, Master North.
Okay. So I've also have two favorite Leia moments. I also agree that my absolute favorite one is that first moment in A New Hope when she takes the blaster and she says, "I'm gonna save myself." She suggests they go down in the trash compactor. From that moment, I knew that Leia was a great character, in my opinion. And my other favorite moment was that short little scene in The Rise of Skywalker when the younger Leia is training with Luke, and it's the final moments of her training. It's just something about that scene. I can't even explain it. I love it. It
It's all the feels.
honestly, it just that scene just pulls on the heartstrings.
Yeah. Especially when you know that it's her daughter playing her physically there.
Wait, where is it really? I did not know that actually.
Yeah.
And then, would you like to hear my favorite Luke moment too?
Yes.
Okay, so my favorite Luke moment is in Return of the Jedi when after he takes down his father, and Palpatine says to strike him down and join him, and he throws down his lightsaber and says he's a Jedi like his father before him. Uh, that moment, in my opinion, is the most powerful moment in the entire saga when he chooses the light over the dark when he's been struggling for not just the entirety of Return of the Jedi, but from the very end of The Empire Strikes Back when he found out that Vader was his father, and he found out and he knew he was a Jedi, and it means so much to me, that scene.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I mean, you guys are definitely taking some of the best ones, but um, watching Leia's interactions with Han on the Falcon in Episode 2, like after the asteroid belt or kind of during that, and they just have this kind of natural banter that is really you don't see it often, and it draws you in. Like you want to be part of that banter, but you also know that you'd be like C-3PO awkwardly there, like
Yeah, for sure.
come on, man, let me. um, I love that, and then also, I mean, uh, whenever you say Leia, I just think of the hologram in that moment, and that iconography is so profound and unique. Of her stooping over to hit record and stopped recording. It's just, I don't know. It's just beautiful to me. Um, but yeah, awesome. Thank you guys so much for that. Uh, we'll just
I
jump.
can I haven't done my favorite Luke moment.
Oh, that's right. I apologize.
No
Yes.
problem.
And your Leia moments.
Yeah. My favorite Leia moment would probably be in episode 6 when she rescues Han from the cryogenic frozen, when she like takes off the mask and it's revealed it's like someone who loves you. I love that moment dearly. And then I know it's a point of contention for a lot of people, but the revelation that she's force sensitive in The Last Jedi, when she's out in space and freezing, and then she like reaches her hand out and flies across, that was a very fun moment. And then my favorite Luke moment, I know I talk about The Last Jedi a lot, but that scene when they're talking about the hubris of the Jedi, and that sort of conversation between Rey and Luke discussing like hope and like what all of the implications of it is one of my favorite scenes in the entire saga, and it's because of like Luke's cynicism and how he could be like convinced in that, and also in in Return of the Jedi, in the 6th movie, when he cuts off Darth Vader's hand, there's just like a point of like, oh yeah, yeah,
Do it.
get the revenge.
It is pretty satisfying when he's just like hammering down on him.
Yeah.
And then, so you just made me think of something that it's not. I don't love it because of the movie, but we have a little book club thing, and we're going through Bloodlines, and as an adult, someone has presented Leia with a holo of her killing Jabba the Hutt, and so she's in her like mid to late 40s watching a video of her in a bikini choking Jabba the Hutt, and in like what's whispered across the galaxy is her other name, Hutt Slayer, and I think that's kind of badass.
That is kind of badass.
But yeah, let's jump into it, right? So Luke's journey starts with A New Hope, and I just want to hear how you guys are feeling, everything about Luke and the New Hope, and we'll start with Master North.
Okay. So Luke in A New Hope, his introduction is perfect because he needs to be this whiny little kid who really he doesn't have great intentions in life. He knows he needs to go to the academy, like maybe become a pilot if he can, but he gets held back. And I think what do I want to say here? When he gets held back, that really starts his journey off in terms of him with the struggles. And then he obviously buys the droids, and what happens, we'll skip ahead, he gets introduced to Obi-Wan. That's one of my favorite moments, because that's when he gets struck with his first bit of hope, when he meets Obi-Wan, because he had already seen the recording and he knew that. Oh wait, no, had he seen yes, he had seen the recording, and that's why R2 left. And that just meant a lot to me, that when he met Obi-Wan. So
yeah, absolutely. And then also real quick, I meant to mention it in the notes here, but we're just gonna hit like 1 or 2 points from each movie. Okay. So then once we finish all of them, then we can talk about it as a whole and then really dive in.
Okay, so the best points for me in that movie with Luke are the first moment when he walks into Leia's cell and she says, aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? And Luke's reaction there is one of my favorite moments in Star Wars, because what I love about it is when it doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's just fun. And then my other moment that I really enjoy there is when he's in the X-Wing running down the trench and he's trying to look into his computer, and the first moment where he really taps in, he gets contacted by Obi-Wan through the Force, and he really makes his first moment where he has connection to the Force. and he shoots the torpedo into the Death Star trench. That's one of my favorite moments as well, just because it shows that there's something greater coming, that this whole saga is going to be about, that it's not just some rebels fighting against an empire. There's something more, something mystical that's going to be so great.
They added a little spice.
Yeah.
And Kohm, you're
Yeah, I Luke in A New Hope, I always think is really interesting because it was like the first instance of this character. So it was George Lucas trying to like, what can I make as the everyman? And I think my favorite moment in A New Hope of Luke is definitely the twin sons scene where he walks out and the beautiful John Williams score is playing, and it's just this idea of hope, but also how terrifying the world is. Of, oh my God, the world is so big, and Luke is just this small person in frame. And I think it really sets up one, like the way that the audience members can see themselves in Luke, and how, oh, I'm ready to grow with this person as a character over however many movies this is, and also sets up his character as this very hopeful, albeit like idealistic, young boy that is ready for whatever adventure is being thrown at him.
Yeah. And then, like, especially the binary sunset scene where he's looking to this vast land, and like,
Yeah.
so much possibility. Like, it's beautiful. Element, what points jump out at you?
I wasn't a big fan of Luke in A New Hope just because he was whiny and all that stuff, but I get that a lot of people see themselves in Luke, like what Max mentioned, because a lot of people, his writing in New Hope is very simplistic in a way that everyone can see their own lives in him. Coming from nowhere, leading a humdrum life, and just maybe doing some chores for your parents, having aspirations to do bigger things, and then wanting to go off. Like, if you wanted to go to university, your parents are like, no, I need your help here, and you're like, okay, I'll stay here and help. But anyone who relates to that part of life also relates to wanting to have that hero's call. Like, you're leading that humdrum life and you're helping your parents and you have these aspirations, but every once in a while everyone's like, I wonder when my R2 is going to show up. I wonder when I'm going to get that message saying I'm a part of something bigger and I'm the hero of this story. So when he goes off and he meets Obi-Wan, like, my thoughts on Luke change progressively throughout the movie. So when I first meet him, it's like, oh, I was going to go to Tashi Station. Like, I was like, well, this kid's like got to slow down a little bit. But he meets Obi-Wan, and he's truly a nice kid. And Obi-Wan's telling him about the Force, and he's genuinely like an open book at that point. And by the end of the movie, he has completely accepted his own gifts and his role in this larger story. And by the very end, when he is in that trench run and it's like, use the Force, Luke, that's when I really started to like him, because I knew that we were going to see some amazing things from this character.
Yeah, I really like how you put that, because it represents that when the movie starts, he is not the main character of his own story in life. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then he gets that call and things change. It's always kind of weird that he didn't quite mourn for his aunt and uncle. He was just kind of like, all right, let's go.
It's a deleted scene.
but
it's actually important that you mentioned that, because historically Jedi were too old to train by his age because they have those attachments. And I like to make a joke. Luckily, the Empire removed those attachments for him.
Thank you, Empire. But yeah, that's seeing his journey, and then also there is nothing more intriguing um than him training on the Falcon, where he blocks the bolts, and then you're like, wait, what? This is a thing. Like I remember my first time watching it, like, okay, that's I can see how that's going to be very useful in the future. Um,
Mhm.
and then also seeing the trench run is incredible even now, because that scene still holds up, you know what I mean? Like it's I know that they've cleaned it up and stuff, but it was so well done. The fact that they had to invent most of the technologies surrounded
Mhm.
all of that stuff was awesome.
Yeah, I still get like that my heartbeat raises. I get like breathless in those moments. I'm like, even after 20 sometimes watching it, it still gives me that great rush and pace the entire time.
Mhm.
Is he gonna make it? Like, yeah.
Especially when he's evading Vader's targeting computer.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Yeah.
Vader's like, he's strong with the Force, and I was like, woo. He's going up against Vader here, and Vader can't even like shoot him down.
Yeah. All right, and then we can jump ahead to our Luke and Empire, my personal favorite film. Um,
Same.
yeah, let's go. I started with Cole last time, so we'll go over here to Max.
I watched Empire Strikes Back this morning, just to like brush up, because I love that movie, and it's I think it shows Luke in a really interesting way, because like if in Episode 4, if in A New Hope he's like whiny, we start to see like his arrogance a little bit in Empire Strikes Back, because I noticed throughout that entire movie he doesn't listen to anyone. Like he does his training with Yoda, but he doesn't listen to R2. He doesn't listen to anyone in the entire movie, and I think that's a really great development for his character, because we start to see him like his place in this universe and what he is developing into, and that is like a hero who needs to be trained. I apologize. My internet is getting a little wonky, so I apologize if I come in and out. But in that first like hour and an hour of that movie, you realize like he isn't listening to anyone, and he needs training, and that was the perfect introduction to Yoda. And I love all of those moments where, for some reason, nowhere else really in Jedi training have I seen someone doing a handstand. And using the Force, but for some reason Yoda is just making him do a handstand for hours on end, causing objects to float. I love that scene, and especially all of those scenes on Dagobah are just wonderful.
Yeah, same. Luke on Dagobah is like, that's my bread and butter in both of these films. Um, and then Pep.
Yeah, same thing here. Like Luke on Dagobah is probably the one thing that makes this my favorite, because it was the first time that we had actually expanded on the Force. And it was also our first time seeing, like, even though Obi-Wan was technically our uh pseudo master sage archetype, it was our first time seeing the master Yoda, and the way he talks about the Force, the way he like he's analogous with things around him and trying to teach Luke all of these concepts without like teaching, because Yoda doesn't really tell you. He kind of just like gives you concepts and abstract thoughts, and then you're supposed to put two and two together. um but like my favorite parts obviously is when he is making a clear distinction in the dark side and the light side. And this is what actually helps me make the distinction between when people are doing combat and stuff. I get a lot of questions asking, um, like, this comes up when you're talking about gray Jedi, right? And how they can be canons, like what how they use lightning, or Luke used Force choke in Return of the Jedi. I'm like, okay, well, watch this clip from Empire Strikes Back where Luke's like, how do I know the good from the bad? And Yoda's like, when you are calm, passive. And I'm just like, there, now you have your answer. Because you can force choke someone with the intention of pacifying them and being calm and not tapping into the rage and anger, and be completely light sided. Um, And to touch just a little bit on what Kohm said about Luke's character development, it was interesting to see how he acted towards Yoda and in this entire movie, because in the first movie, he was the farm boy, and he had just he just accepted his role in the Rebel Alliance, but going into Empire, he had lost Obi-Wan, and he had to kind of fully accept the sole responsibility, because Obi-Wan wasn't there anymore. So he was acting on his own volition to seek out training from Master Yoda, and that was the first time ever he was separated from Han, Leia, and Obi-Wan. That he was left to his own devices. He was left to his independent thoughts, and that's when the snarky Luke came out, as Max says.
I like it. And Cole.
So I'd like to start with one of the moments in Emperor Strikes Back that no one's brought up. The scene with the X-Wing when Luke is trying to lift it out of the swamp and he can't. And he says that he can't because it's too big. And there's just this little green guy, Yoda, who goes ahead and he lifts the X-Wing out of the swamp. And it's Luke's denial of himself in that moment that is so powerful, because when he sees that Yoda, this small little person who he would think would be weaker than him, is able to lift the X-Wing and move it, I think it lights a little spark inside of him, like wow, I really do have that power in me too. And it's almost inspiring to me, because it's like maybe we could all have that little spark in us, something, and it's like everyone has something special, and it just feels so touching to me in that terms. And also, I like though it's short and it only comes up in the end of the movie. Of course, I love the conflict between Luke and Vader from the entire fight, but also after, yeah, but also after he reveals to him that he's his father, uh, and he gets his arm cut off, and there's the whole "I am your father" scene. Luke screams after he falls through the pit, and that moment when he connects to Leia through the Force when he's hanging about to die. Uh, that was another moment that was just really great to me, because it shows, wow, everyone's telling Luke that he's the last hope for the Jedi and he has to stay. But then we hear that there is another in that one little scene between Yoda and Obi-Wan. And when Luke connects to Leia, it's just foreshadowing that Leia is the other one.
Yeah.
And I like that the foreshadowing there, and it I don't know, it's just so amazing to me there, where he's able to connect to her. It's a powerful moment to me.
Yeah. I mean, I remember being little and watching. Well, this whole film is introducing us to these unfolding powers and
Yeah.
abilities that we had no idea existed.
Force
But
Ghost.
yeah, I mean, the first one, all we know is that Obi-Wan disappeared, and everyone was even Vader is like kicking the robe, like, is he in there? Did he get little? Or like, so we saw that, we saw him deflect the bolts, and then we heard Obi-Wan's voice, but that's it. We watched this one. We see him pull the lightsaber to defeat a giant ice monster, which was terrifying to me. Um, we see him levitating the objects, and there's just so many new little things that we got, especially that connection between him and Leia, two people who are alive. So that was just always just really cool to me. But yeah, watching his growth as a character, he did go from being that naive uh farm boy to being a naive soldier, but he was still very naive. And my favorite part is when it's on Dagobah, where he's like getting irritated at Yoda, who's just being a fool. But like he wasn't being a fool for all that long, you know what I mean? And he just like starts yelling at him and stuff, and Yoda's like, he's impatient, you know, he's like, I don't think he can do this. And Yoda was half right, you know, like in his experience. Yeah, he didn't show the patience, he didn't show the humility, and even, you know, he left training, he wasn't done. um it's just fascinating because he also he's trying to learn from Yoda, but he doesn't believe Yoda that whole time. When and my mind goes straight to the cave, which I was super confused by when I was little. Personally, I just may be dumb, but um Yoda says, "Don't take your weapons. You're not gonna need them." And he's like, "Screw you! I'm getting my blaster. I got my lightsaber."
Tighten the belt even more.
I'll pick up a stick for an extra weapon just for spite. Yeah, so he he drops down in there, sees Vader, and kills him. And Yoda refers to it as a failure. And when I was little, I was like, "What? No, but he won." And I'm like, that's not the point. That's and I just there's such these little moments that only at the end when he's, you know, staring down Vader, the whole fight with Vader, he keeps going into progressively smaller and smaller spaces, wide open chamber, and then into this room, and then to a bridge, and there's nowhere to go, and you don't have a hand, and he's probably in that realizing, yeah, Yoda might have been right. It might have been too soon, but
Another catalyst from that scene was Yoda's words, "Only what you take with you." So it was very revealing what Luke found in that cave. When he saw Darth Vader, was it what he took vengeance with him? He wanted to avenge Obi-Wan. When he struck him down and saw him himself, did he see a bit of himself in Darth Vader? Like, what was he taking with him? I thought that was a pretty interesting kind of mind-blowing moment to think about in that cave scene.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting as Luke's perspective. He's only known really two Jedi, because he knew that Darth Vader used to be a Jedi, that killed his father. That's all he knew when he went into that forest, and he saw Obi-Wan. So he saw like his two options were to either be like Obi-Wan or be like Darth Vader. So him seeing himself in Darth Vader's helmet is that, oh, this is something that I could become. Like this is one of my greatest fears.
Yeah. And then I'd like to think that scene also foreshadows a little bit when he sees himself in Vader, and then he gets revealed later on in the movie that Vader is his father.
Mhm.
It shoves him even deeper into that. Do I want to get revenge? Is this my path to go to the darkness? Am I supposed to stay into the light? It's the whole movie is just, it's really, I like to focus in on his inner struggles there. And when he's revealed by Vader that he is his son, he doesn't know where to go. And I think that's just, it's so close to me even, because I'm at a point in my life like, where do I want to go from here? Because I recently got out of high school a year ago. So it's like, it just, so much of our lives is like, what do we do next? And that's it. It's kind of foreshadows in The Empire Strikes Back to me.
Yeah.
Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you.
And it also kind of foreshadows that the lesson that all of us needed to, or are still needing to learn, which is that be careful what you wish for, right? Because
Yeah.
throughout the first, you know, basically he knows that Vader killed his dad, and he saw Vader fighting Ben, and Ben's dead. What's he seeking right now? Power. I need to become a great warrior. I need to be able to kill the people who are against me. Is that the lesson? You know, I'm looking for a great warrior. Wars do not make one great.
Mhm.
Like it's sorry, I can just keep going on this movie, but we need to jump ahead. All right, Return of the Jedi. So Return of the Jedi, one or two points that jump out of you. We'll start with that element.
Well, I mentioned this earlier, but the things that jumped out at me the most was how much he had grown without us as the audience knowing kind of like the interim between the movies. Because like the first time we see Luke, he's wearing black, he's got his robes, he has his own lightsaber, he's using force choke, he's using mind trick, he's doing all of these things that a fully fledged Jedi Knight would be doing, and we don't know whether or not he's been training, who's been training him, and what he's been up to since we last saw him. And uh, it was it was amazing to see that kind of progression in his power set, because, and I like to refer to this when people are talking about Rey. You kind of accept it. You kind of accept that in between movies, something happened. He spoke to Yoda, Obi-Wan, Force Ghosts, and in this case, if you're reading the 2020 run of the comics, did he train with Verla to learn the choke techniques? Which is something that we still have to kind of explore, because they've kind of taken a break from that little narrative, which I'm kind of ticked off on. I was just like, let's just get back to Luke and Verla. But in any case, like sticking to the movies, there is this huge disparity between Luke in Empire and Luke in Return of the Jedi. He is so sure of himself in front of the guards, in front of Jabba the Hutt, and especially in front of Vader the first time.
The Chanel boots. That's confidence, man.
Absolutely.
When you look good, you strut. That's just how it is, you
know. And yeah, especially in front of Darth Vader, like he knows he's his father. And the last time he saw him, he lost his hand. He was like, no. And then now he's just like, I'm going to turn you back to the light. You know, I see no conflict in you, and I'm not going to fail. And the most interesting thing about that turn of like his confidence and bravado was that we saw him chip a little, because when Vader threatened Leia, Luke lost his stuff. He went in on Vader, struck him down, and took off his hand. And that was the first moment, like we knew that he kind of juggled around with his inner darkness, as with all Skywalkers. But that was the moment that we kind of admittedly said, oh, he really does have the capacity to go to the dark side. And we kind of all know that, at some point Lucas had explored that storyline. And even to this day, when you think about the original title was going to be Revenge of the Jedi, and Mark Hamill was like, I thought I was going to turn. It's interesting to think about it, because it is possible. It's not beyond Luke's character, and it's not beyond the Skywalker name to latch onto that darkness when your loved one is threatened. And even before the prequels, that was our first wow, the Skywalker family, the curse of how to react to when your loved one is threatened.
Yeah.
And Luke was Anakin before Anakin existed, and that's kind of crazy to think about. And then of course his redemption of Vader. I'm like recapping the movie. I'm sorry, guys.
Totally.
No.
It's a great movie.
Chanel boots Luke is that's what stands out to me.
It is beautiful though, because even some of the simplest type of symbolism, where we have Luke in A New Hope wearing mostly white, and then in the next movie he's in a gray jumpsuit, and in this one he strolls in black, and you're like, okay, where is this going? It's so cool. But Cole, your thoughts on it?
So, Return of the Jedi, at one point I'd like to make before I even say anything, this movie is it's not my favorite Star Wars movie, but it is the most touching to me because Luke is my favorite character, and this is where I believe he peaks. So it's just this is the movie that I adore the most. Uh, but what I really like, touching on what Element said, is Luke's confidence in this movie. Uh, he goes from someone who, from A New Hope, was just like we said, this whiny little kid who we knew there was a spark of something in him, but it hadn't come out yet, to in Empire, he's starting to blossom a little bit. And by Return of the Jedi, he's finally come full circle. And just in every moment from negotiating with Jabba to, even talking with Yoda, you could just see the growth in the way he acts, in his confidence with Jabba. He isn't afraid to say what he needs to say when negotiating over Solo and getting everyone free. And even in the worst moment, when it comes down to they're about to get dropped into the Sarlacc and there's all these bounty hunters pointing rifles at them, uh, he's still not giving up. Like let them go or you're gonna die. It just shows like it is a bit of an overconfidence, I think, but it just shows that he believes he can be the best. But then it comes around into the fight with Vader, and you start to see the cracks in his character, even though it's like when he starts to break down, it's all in the love for Leia. You start to see, wow, like he can really turn, he can go into darkness, but it's when he prevails. And even after he just cut off his father's arm and his father is there laying on the ground nearly close to death, he says, no, I'm going to take a stand, and I am going to stay with what I feel the truest to in my heart, and I am a Jedi. I will not turn down this dark path. And it's just something that we should all believe in life, because even when we're in our darkest path, we should know that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and we just need to strive to find it, and we can't let ourselves go eat ourselves up, pretty much, which is symbolized to me in the dark side, because it eats away at you, and Luke didn't let it eat away at him. And also another thing I want to point out, I love how when he gets shocked with Force lightning by Palpatine, nothing happens to his skin at all. But at the same time, in Revenge of the Sith, when Palpatine shoots his Force lightning at Wendy's lightsaber and comes back at him, it fries his skin. Is there some sort of explanation to that, or
I I think Palpatine was
edged?
using Force conceal on himself to kind of hide the dark side corruption in him, and when
Mm-hmm.
it was recoiling back to him, it kind of just washed it away.
Okay.
It's kind of like a strong makeup wipe. It just kind of like, this is what I've looked like the entire time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like when Tsunade lets go of her jutsu, and
Yeah.
you're like, I also have I love the points, and also Sky Guy T100 in the chat was talking about the line where Luke says, "Soon I'll be dead, and you'll be dead with me," like to the Emperor. Uh, harking back to that confidence, the thing that really resonates to me is, why couldn't he lift the X-wing?
Because he didn't believe.
He didn't believe he could. This time he comes in, he believes he can do anything he wants. And that's the key difference, and that's the growth over this. And that's why I love the new comic series. We're getting that in between and how he got from one to the other. But Max?
Yeah, with the sixth movie, that was my first, like, it was really funny because I saw episode 3, and then I had a VHS box set of the original trilogy, and A New Hope was missing, so I was like, why not just go straight to episode 6, because that makes sense. So that was like that was my first original trilogy Star Wars before I could see A New Hope. What I loved about Luke, now that I've seen all of those movies, what I loved about Luke the most is it sets up for the audience of like, oh, he's on top of the world, he's at his peak of power, and he has become what, because the term Jedi had not been like fully formed and defined at that point to understand it fully. So everyone is like, oh, he's now a Jedi. This is what we consider like a Jedi master or whatever. And what I love is the reminder that he is still human, especially in that last moment when he's just wailing on Darth Vader that he even if he's done all of this training, he still has that humanity within him. And I think that was like the basis of writing for Anakin as well, is that even if no matter how powerful, emotionless he gets, there is that humanity, that spark of humanity within him that can lead to the dark side, that can lead to a moment like I'm going to just rip off the limbs of Darth Vader like Luke. And I love that moment because one, it instills that hope of like, even at your darkest moment, like Cole said, even at your darkest moment, you can come back from it. But also it's okay to be human, even if you've done all of these things. It's not something that you can escape. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, both Luke and Vader come back from their darkest moment.
Yeah.
Right there.
Mhm.
So,
And I think Vader came back a little bit earlier, and then something that the sequels kind of helped with. In the Rise of Skywalker, when he says, "I made the proposal to Luke, and he had his father to save him." So when you look back, and this is what I love about kind of like retrospective viewings, when you look back at Return of the Jedi, and Vader stops Luke from striking him down. He's like, is that Vader or is that Anakin? He's like, no, he's gonna take over your body. Stop it. It's just crazy to think about, like how that one line in the Rise of Skywalker completely changes everything about the Return of the Jedi and gives even more weight to how Luke says there is no like there's still good in you. Like I feel it. And it was in that moment, like for me, it was in that moment where he saved him from becoming Palpatine's host. And then obviously Vader says there is no conflict, and that's when Vader came back. But I think that in that moment he was Anakin.
okay. I like a self-denying Anakin. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I've already like Thelma and Louise this. Like, we're going over the cliff. It's done. It's too late for me. So next on the list, well, just real quick. I mean, the moment you touched on earlier, Cole, when he throws down the lightsaber and says, "I'm a Jedi like my father," happens here, and it's so beautiful and so powerful, and it is the extension of the cave scene where Yoda tells him, "You don't need your weapons. Don't bring them." Right? He almost gave into the dark side because he had the opportunity to, because he had his weapons. A second ago, he was saying, "Soon you'll be dead, and me along with you." Like, he wasn't going to do anything. So he finally realized that lesson, threw his lightsaber away, and was like, "Okay, this is it," And I love that, and it echoes backwards and forwards so beautifully. And I just love it. So Return of the Jedi was my favorite for a very long time, and then slowly Empire creeped up and like things kind of jostled around. Also, go ahead.
Well, it also goes back to Yoda saying in the cave too, only what you take with you. And in that moment, he took with him, he was a Jedi, and his father was a Jedi, and so Vader was no longer Vader; he was Anakin.
I like that a lot. He was carrying his father's goodness with him, not his father's darkness. Whew. Sorry, that's beautiful. I also wanted to touch on Vader's funeral at the end. And then we see the Force Ghosts. And I remember being little. This is before we had Hayden Christensen.
Mm-hmm.
This is before the prequels. And so I was always like, who is that guy?
Am I supposed to know him?
So that always just makes me laugh. But I do love the scene because his he followed his heart, and it paid off. He had opposed Yoda, what Yoda and Obi-Wan had said before, and was wrong. this time he opposed him and was right, but it was because his heart was in the right place and not seeking revenge or evil. But it also harkens back to the potentially destructive nature of attachments and how they can make you do things that you would normally be out of character because you're trying to protect someone else. Anyways, so I put TFA on the list. I know he's only in the movie for like 4 seconds tops, but this is something.
4 seconds.
It was a powerful 4 seconds. I'm curious on your thoughts of A, the 4 seconds, and B, um, the concept of having JJ's concept of having Luke not there. He's run away. You know what I mean? A lot of people, I mean, personally, I think a lot of us here enjoy The Last Jedi, but a lot of people say that that decision was Ryan Johnson's. And I do like to point out, like, no, we set this up in The Force Awakens. He had a student that ruined things. He left and all this stuff. So, and the whole film, I mean, Luke Skywalker is missing is the first sentence of the crawl. So the 4 seconds he's there, and the rest of the time he's not there. Any thoughts jump out at you guys? We'll start with Element.
I mean, obviously there are things that jump out at me now, having like seen the other two movies and having read Rise of Kylo Ren. But I think the only thing I'm gonna say is that he says so much in 4 seconds with that one look than I think he ever said in all of the original trilogy. Just that one look. And if you read into his expression, you'll get the same feeling that I did. Like when he looked at Rey and there was just this moment of silence, it was like, oh my gosh, he's telling a story right now. And that was a very powerful 4 seconds. And it's the reason why I left the theater kind of like pissed, like initially, because I was like, come on, give me more.
You
like,
know what we
say
want.
something.
You know what I want. Give it.
Yeah. But that's all I'll say about that. Very powerful 4 seconds.
All right. And Master No?
So I would like to say that the child dream in me wanted to go into The Force Awakens. I knew that Luke wasn't going to have a major role in it because he wasn't in the advertising and the trailers and all that. But I don't know. The child in me would just wish that we would go into that movie with. I didn't know any of the books going into it, anything like that. I went into the movie with a clean slate, and I just wanted to see Luke's new Jedi Order, this, that, and that was the child in me. But looking ahead now, I see that there wasn't much more that they could have done with Luke because they needed to introduce this new generation of characters that they wanted to introduce. But that's enough of that. Going into that 4 seconds that he's on screen, like what Element said, Mark in the sequels in general, his performance is amazing. It's the best acting in Star Wars, easily. And the emotion in his eyes in that moment, it like Element said, it tells a whole nother story. And you could see that the conflict in Luke, and he knows that there's something special about this girl standing in front of him. But now I know this now. I didn't know this then. But looking back on it now, it's just, the pain of what his past is just coming back to him in that moment. And he knows that he's going to have to face it now. And he's in denial in that moment. And it's just so powerful to me. And the stare is it's just so beautifully shot, the whole thing.
Yeah, love it. And last but not least, Max?
Yeah, I just in that 4 seconds. I love that 4 seconds because you can see it going through like Luke's head. I don't want to be Yoda. I don't want this journey to have this loop. I don't want to become the old because one, Yoda was a great master, but he also saw how Yoda's pain like hurt him. All of the being the last Jedi master and being the last of being so alone and isolated for so long, and he's realizing that he is becoming that as well. And so I think that there is so much bittersweetness in that, especially when I saw it, because everyone in the theater was like cheering, and I was like, this is a really sad dude. He looks so sad right now. But in terms of like Luke being missing, I think it creates a really like interesting. I love the idea that in that first sentence, the first thing you get is Luke, something happened and Luke failed, and I really, really love that. Because it also creates this idea of legend. I know we're not going to go into legends, but this idea that Luke Skywalker is now a legend, and is now like people can create this symbol of hope around him, and that has created this idea that if you find Luke Skywalker, you'll save the world. And I think that leads perfectly into The Last Jedi.
Yeah, man, beautifully said. It just, I don't know, it just kills me. You guys like. Every time I do an episode, there's always just like thoughts that I have, but I don't know that I have until someone else like puts them together and like this. I'm like, oh yeah, that came from my mind. Your mouth, but my mind or whatever. Yeah, but for me, and you guys have very beautifully touched on, you know, the brief time that he's in the film. So I'll talk about when he's not in the film, and they had a monumental task of the intention was this to be, you know, the next Star Wars for the new generation. We're bringing these new characters in and all this stuff. How do you do that without Luke taking over the whole movie? Like, he's so charismatic and like cool that as soon as he's on stage, you're like, what's this guy doing? What's he up to? You know what I mean? And so I did a bunch of research to find out what George Lucas was originally planning. And even then, those writers had what they called the Luke problem of how do we not make Luke the main character? You know what I mean? So while I wasn't originally on board with, you know, Luke being in exile, I understand the purpose of it, and it works. You know, it does work and it does follow his story. But yeah, it absolutely works. And then that, you know, last second, I almost wish didn't happen. And I'll say it for a reason, because I feel like the Last Jedi could have taken place a little bit further away, but we had to find out the end of that scene. You know what I mean? And that kind of forced them to butt the movies up together. You know, that's my only thing. But I still love it. And like you said, Cole, Mark Hamill's performance is the best part of all of Star Wars together. Like, it is. And I feel like all those years of playing the Joker made him just the best actor ever.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to explain it, but like, if you can go that wacky, then it just gives you.
You could do anything.
Exactly. Speaking of The Last Jedi, let's get started. This one, I gotta let Max take it away because I know this is your number one.
Yeah.
Don't worry, man. Just go off. I mean, I know for myself and Element, it's our number 2. I'm not sure where it ranks for you, Cole.
It's a little bit lower on my end, but I have positive stuff to say. So.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
No worries. No.
Change that.
By the way, the goal is not to change your mind or make it your favorite or anything. We're just talking awesome things about Luke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have no intention of changing anyone's opinion on The Last Jedi. I've mentioned that in multiple TikToks. Yeah, I love Luke in The Last Jedi so much because I think him falling into exile, like you said, makes perfect sense. I've like mulled this over in my head over and over and over again, because I think a lot of people like I said in at the beginning, I think a lot of people see themselves within Luke, especially those who are exposed to the original trilogy, like they saw it in theaters or at a very young age, and they can see themselves as the hero of the story. And no one wants to see themselves fail. No one wants to see it. No one wants to see themselves like fall to darkness or whatever. And I think what I enjoyed so much about Luke's writing is because it never really escaped what he was originally. He was a boy on a farm who wanted to be something greater than himself. And when he was given that opportunity, he did the best that he could. But he is still a human, and everyone fails at everything. But I think the beautiful thing about how Luke articulates his failure as a Jedi is that his hope turned into idealism. He allowed his hope to turn into something greater than realism and what could actually happen. And because of that, he failed. And we could talk about how like Snoke or Emperor Palpatine or whatever got to Kylo Ren before Luke did, and there was always darkness. But I think it exemplifies how, like I said before, Luke is a human being, and sometimes when you fail hard. And in those dark moments, sometimes you want to give up, and the unfortunate part is that Luke did. And in the Return of the Jedi, he didn't give up, but this is something. There is a difference between, trying to get your father from darkness and trying to get, your sister's son from darkness, because there's so many more degrees of failure within that. And I think I don't want to talk everyone's ear off about this, so I'll sort of wrap it up, kind of, and I apologize for talking so long already. I think it is a truly beautiful thing how they wrote his character, especially when they were discussing the hubris of the Jedi in that sacred cave. I don't remember what it was called. Because it is Luke who he's allowed himself to fall to cynicism. It's an old man who's lived a life that almost no one else can in that universe can like compare themselves to, especially becoming a legend. And he has allowed himself to lose hope because he feels like his hope has gotten too big. And also the binary sons at the end of his arc in that movie makes me cry every time. Doesn't matter how many times I've seen it. It is truly one of the most beautiful moments in all of Star Wars for me.
Awesome. I love it. And an Element.
This movie did so much for as little as it did so much to kind of reconcile itself with the rest of the story. And I don't know if a lot of people got it on their first viewing. And I certainly didn't. I had to watch it a couple of times, but I realize now that it is my favorite movie, not because, well, largely because of Luke, but because it's the only movie. Well, the originals couldn't, but it's the only movie that we get after the prequels that acknowledges the prequels. So a lot of people kind of latch on to this. They're not mentioning Anakin. They're afraid of saying his name, but like they're kind of taking the whole story, the whole narrative of the prequels, and kind of putting it in Luke's lap and saying, what do you think of this? Like, what do you think of the fall of the Jedi Order? Do you think they screwed up? And the spoiler alert, they did. And just as Lucas says, Star Wars rhymes, it was the fall of an order that drove two masters to exile. And I love that kind of parallelism between Yoda and Luke. And Yoda, obviously, he had great intentions for the Order. It was his laser focus on the Clone Wars and just losing sight of what it meant to be a Jedi that caused the fall of the Order in the prequels. And for Luke, it was like Max mentioned, his lack of pragmatism and his latching on to an idealism of trying to rebuild what the Jedi Order once was. And the fact that it was his effort to rebuild what failed that made him fail. And then he's like, if you strip away the myth and look at their deeds, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're really mentioning that the Jedi sucked back then. And that's like one of the greatest things that I thought came out of The Last Jedi, because you know it's tough to kind of reconcile with a failure back then. And Luke's character in here is just exacerbated even more when you think about the curse of the Skywalker name, or the Skywalker legacy. Expectation after expectation thrust up.
You're muted now.
I think yeah.
Hey,
When did I go mute?
The word thrust.
Okay. The curse of the Skywalker story and the legacy. Unrealistic expectations. Thrust upon Anakin as the chosen one. Thrust upon Luke as the legend who saved the galaxy. And you fail once with those kinds of expectations, you're gonna fall hard. And he took that literally, as Max said, you're gonna fail hard. And it was such a moment of realism that I didn't expect that I wanted to see from Luke, because I knew he was gonna fail. He was in exile. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. But just like his cynicism and his the way he is talking to Rey about just like, I can't do this, you know. The Jedi have to end. This is some like deep stuff.
Yeah.
Some conclusions that you don't expect Luke to come to. And the last thing I'll say is that it all comes back to my favorite moment from The Last Jedi, when he stares down the First Order and he confronts Ben. The most important thing about that scene is that he is confronting Ben in the way he should have before he failed. So he confronts Ben, draws his saber, realizes it's a mistake, and fails, loses Ben. On Crate, he confronts Ben with zero violent intentions, just as a projection, and then you think, wow, this is his redemption. He is confronting Ben non-violently the way he should have been, and non-violently as a Jedi should. And then just to touch on what Max said in his points.
as real quick,
binary-
that's another thing of don't take your weapons. You won't need them.
Absolutely. In the binary sunset scene where he's when he is finally accepted that his time is done and he has fulfilled his role, like it makes me cry when I read the novelization, because there's an extra part that just like drives it home completely. Is that he's looking off and he's ready to go, and then there's the voice, let go. Like, Obi-Wan, what are you doing, man? Why you gotta make me feel this way? Oh man. Yeah, I just love The Last Jedi and what it did for Luke's character, and just the ability it had to not make him the main character, but still give him a challenge to overcome. That was just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cole, your thoughts on it?
Okay, so I definitely don't have as much to say as Element and Max. I've only
Totally.
seen
No human does.
I've only seen The Last Jedi twice, so one of them's viewings being today, so I'm pretty fresh on it. But I'm gonna say what I expected going in. The bubbly, oh my god, this is the new Star Wars movie. Luke Skywalker is coming back. Child in me wanted to see Luke do some crazy force powers and have epic battles and just be the perfect hero. And that's what I expected going in, and that's why I personally felt so let down, because I just built this I built this thought in my head after watching Return of the Jedi and even reading some of Legends as a kid that Luke Skywalker was just perfect. But what I do like about what they did with Luke is some of I'm still not a big fan of him from the very start in The Force Awakens being written to be gone and having lost everything. But what I do like is it feels almost like a passing of the torch because it's Luke stepping into the role of his mentor and passing down the role that we saw him in the original trilogy over to the next generation in Rey, which is just really great to me. Besides that, there's not that much that I really love. I really like some of the moments, like the scene where he first really meets back up with R2 and they have a little bit of banter between each other. That's
what
just,
got me. That's what got me.
yeah, that's great to me. I'm not too keen on the way. I'm not too fond with the way that he went out, to be honest. Even the first time I watched it, I thought when I knew that eventually I was gonna have to watch Luke Skywalker die in this trilogy, but I really thought that it would pull on my heartstrings and make me feel a lot more emotional than it did. I was kind of a blank slate watching Luke die, and I don't know what it was. I was expecting this almost like what happened with Han, like this super traumatic, like action-packed death. I almost thought, the line where he says, "What do you expect me to go out with a laser sword and face down the whole First Order?" When I first saw him come onto Crate, I thought that's what was going to happen. And in my mind, I thought, oh my God, he's about to come face down the whole First Order with a laser sword. And I thought what was going to happen was he was going to like lift up all these walkers and like soldiers with the Force and just crush them all, but get stabbed by Ben or something like that was going to happen. And it was going to be this big action-packed emotional death for Luke where he saves everyone, but he has to sacrifice himself. But looking back now, when I saw it today, I like what Max said. I looked at the more subtle things like the score in the background and just the theme of the binary sunset. That that's all very beautiful to me. But I'm torn on the Force projection death. I don't know how I feel about it. I really don't have much of a deeper thought about it, but I just haven't seen this movie enough to really give an educated
and
analysis.
And that's totally fine. And that's one of the reasons, I wanted to make sure. I mean, it's one reason I love having you here is because you have a different opinion, and none of us here we don't attack people for not for not having the same agreement. You know what I mean?
I will admit, on my first viewing, I thought, I didn't have time to kind of process it in that scene when he got stabbed by Kylo. I was like, I wasn't thinking projection at that point. Like, just like the hot take was like, yo, he's this powerful. He's absorbing a light sword. He's
going Super Saiyan.
Exactly. Oneness without dying. Like, are we seeing this right now? That was my hot take. I was like so prepared.
This is Naruto, and he's Toby, and he's teleporting part of his body away.
Oh man.
No, so I also really enjoyed the movie. I was actually shocked to find out that anyone didn't personally, which is it's not wrong, it's not right. A lot of my friends didn't enjoy it, but when I watch Luke and how he talks about the legend of the Jedi and the legend of Luke Skywalker, it resonated with me so much because for me, my hero was Luke Skywalker. You know what I mean? That's what I grew up with. And Luke Skywalker was meant to represent me watching these films. The the big change comes if you are the current group of children watching this movie to grow up to know how to love it. Luke Skywalker is not you. Ben is you, or Ray is you. Luke Skywalker is your dad. You know what I mean? And it's like when you grow up, and like personally, I grew up and I realized my parents didn't know what they were doing this entire time. Are you kidding me? That's that's kind of, I don't know. That's kind of what it felt like to me. And he acknowledges, like, man, there was no way I could fail because I was the legend of Luke Skywalker. And it's like, but I'm a person. And I remember, I know it resonates with me personally from my own personal family experience, where my mom, when I was like 16 or 17, I was viewing my parents as these beings or parents, and I was like, no, I'm a person. You know what I mean? I'm a person and my name is Anakin. And so that aspect I really enjoyed. His death, the binary sunset, that actually wasn't what got to me. What got to me is what happened before. He walks in, and so before this whole time, he separated himself from. He's saying that the Jedi need to be separated from the galaxy because we keep repeating the same thing over and over again, and it's not working. You know what I mean? Like, stop it. Separated himself from the Jedi, from the Force, from his family and his attachments, his friends, and from his own like kind of hero's journey of being this person that inspires hope. And so how this movie took Luke and they reconnected him with the Force, reconnected him with his family. They reconnected him with the galaxy. They put him right in the prime seat of this conflict, like he said he was not going to be. They make him inspire hope for the entire next generation, and let Rey know that she can do what she's trying to do. And he did all of this stuff without ever becoming the main character of this film. I thought that was incredible. And Mark Hamill's performance is just, when he's facing down Kylo Ren, and after one of the swipes and he spins back and he looks up and he has tears in his eyes, that's what got me. That it wasn't the death, it was that part of, I failed you. Him saying to Leia, I'm not here to save him, and then him saying, I failed you, were two very powerful things, because he recognized, I failed, but just because I failed doesn't mean it's over. And he says, when I'm gone, I will not be the last Jedi. And when Yoda died, he said, when I'm gone, you will be the last Jedi. Like, the mirroring of those two scenes, just powerful to me. If you can rewatch all of Luke's scenes on Dagobah in Empire and Return of the Jedi, and then watch The Last Jedi, I think it just hits different. Just hits different.
Yeah, and like discussing quick like thing about like parallels. What I loved about the binary sunset specifically is when we first saw the binary sunset scene in episode 4, it's this wide, expansive, open space that's like, it shows the full horizon. And then when we watch it at the end of The Last Jedi, it's this almost small, just this quiet, small moment between him and the sunset. There's no huge horizon among him. It's almost, I don't remember the exact look of the shot, but it looks like it's coming from, like the shot is coming from in the cave, inside the cave outward. And just in the brilliance of Ryan Johnson, it shows that Luke has now a better understanding of his universe, of his world, and what he has done, and his adventure has come to a closing door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Audible mention to the Yoda, his final lesson,
Yeah.
teaching himself the lesson he needed to learn as well, coming from his own failure from the Jedi Order. And my favorite quote from that scene is like, "We are what they grow beyond,"
Mhm.
and that's just like the burden of all masters. It's like, yo, that's deep.
Yeah.
Yoda's always so deep.
And that goes back to this is my dad. The goal is to have your kids be better than you, you know. And I was and Miss Aggie Marilu in the chat talks about when she last time her and her husband watched it, they were both let out loud sniffles on opposite sides of the room. just because of all the feels, and so I love it. And then also it means it hits different now, but him saying goodbye to Princess Leia and giving her the dice, like she died after this movie, and that is. Never mind. I'm not even going to talk about it. I cried last week. I'm not going to cry this week. All right. Damn it. Anyways.
Nothing wrong with it.
I cry all the time.
All right. So we get to the Rise of Skywalker. Right. This is again a short cameo, but we get Luke still having a growth. Luke's dead, and he's still having a growth arc. It's crazy. Element, your thoughts on it?
Oh man, I just love the way that he came in. Obviously, I expected him. I think it was like I was 95% sure he was gonna come in catching that lightsaber. But the way he came in, the music swelling, and just the lesson he teaches Rey is kind of like an echo of the lesson that Yoda had tried to impart in his last lesson in the Last Jedi. But it was also mixed in with this whole kind of revelation that he kind of knew who she was after. I think it came after he had reconnected with the Force, and he said that Leia knew, and she saw your spirit. It was a very touching moment, especially when he says some things are stronger than blood. And it's kind of like the way I see it, Luke in that very moment had finally realized that he is, and everyone is, stronger than their lineage. He's not going to be, or he was not going to be tethered by the legacy of his father and the legacy of his failure. And he was just going to be Luke in that very moment. And when he returned, it was kind of like a revelation for Rey, and just being like, listen, we all have this legacy that's just tethered to our blood lineage. You don't have to accept that. You choose who you want to be, and you choose the legacy you want to lead and the legacy you want to leave. And it was a very powerful moment for him to kind of pass on that torch with Rey and just tell her, this is your trial. And then we get to see that she had passed it and become a Jedi Knight. But the last thing I'll say is just all of the feels in the room times 1000 when he finally lifts his X-Wing and the music swells with Yoda's theme. And I was just like, finally, he did it. My boy, he did it. Oh, it was so good.
Absolutely. And then Cole?
So, my favorite part about Luke coming back is when he catches the lightsaber, because it just feels like he's coming full swing from where he was at the very beginning of The Last Jedi when we saw him when he throws it backwards. And well, I'm not a big fan of the theme of The Rise of Skywalker. I do like the message that Luke is giving to Rey that, like Element said, some things are just stronger than blood, and who you are and what your family and the name of what you're expected to be is, that doesn't have to be you. You are who you are, and I like that he just really shows her that she could shape her own path and be who she needs to be, because she's so lost in what am I, like what is my path, who am I. And I think that through his own growth throughout that trilogy, he's able to tell her that she can be who she needs to be, because he found himself again in the Last Jedi, and he knew that he needed to, well, see, I can't really talk about this because I just haven't seen it enough. I
No, it's no worries. It's no worries. But
Totally fine.
I've only seen The Rise of Skywalker once.
I've seen
but
it
like he
twice,
says
don't
there,
worry.
like he says there, no one is really gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Max, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, quick tangent. I think I saw Rise of Skywalker in theaters, and right before the movie started, I leaned over to the person I was seeing it with, and I said, "I'm gonna guess it right now. Rey's a Palpatine." And the moment that was revealed, I almost stood up and started cheering for myself. I just thought it was a great little thing. But I think Luke's appearance in that scene with Rey is a perfect message to like a lot of young people going through different emotional stuff right now, because Luke basically said, I know it's terrifying that we, in our worldview, we only really know our family legacy, but we are never defined by that. And that's sort of like repeating what everyone has said. But what I really appreciated about that was, it wasn't him saying like, you aren't disrespecting your family name. What you are doing is saying that you are above it. You can still, you don't have to completely denounce who you are. It's about being who you are, not defined by a legacy. And I think the beautiful moment of Rey, who is the granddaughter of Palpatine, and Luke, who is the son of Darth Vader, having this little moment between each other of if we were not who we are, we would be defined by evil. We would be defined by two of the most powerful Sith Lords in all of canon history, and nothing past that. But because we rose above it and we became Luke Skywalker and Rey Skywalker, we are, we are our own people. And I think that was just a beautiful, beautiful moment. And I love him catching the lightsaber. I felt like some like very heavy metal music should play when he does it.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that moment as well. I mean, I've heard complaints that no, you shouldn't be able to interact with the physical world, but like no, like Obi-Wan's been doing that since Return of the Jedi. Like, come on, he brushed aside like trees and sat on a log.
They're standing
Yeah.
on the ground.
I've never even had that thought before because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah,
it hasn't
that
crossed
never
my
occurred
mind.
to me either.
Yoda caused a thunderstorm with his mind. What are you talking about?
Yeah, no, that people complain about that too, and that really never occurred to me either. I always just figured that Force ghosts were able to interact with the physical world and use the Force, though. Like, it never.
Yeah, I always just thought of it as like using the nature side of the Force, just like the Bendu does in Rebels. But
Yeah.
no. Aside from that, and I will say, just for posterity, my Rise of Skywalker is actually my least favorite movie. It's moved to the bottom of the list. Rogue One was the bottom of the list. This is
Really?
But in my
That's
last,
surprising.
actually, after I did the Rogue One podcast talking to Rogue One fans, it's actually bumped it up, and there's like new insights I didn't notice before. But that being said, I love this moment because it shows what Luke has come to learn from his last failure, meaning that there's always something to learn and you're never done. No one is ever done growing and changing, and it's just, I know, it's just like a really cool message. And I hope and I'm not to pick on you, Cole, but especially when you're young, it's, I felt the pressure that I needed to know exactly what I was doing, where I was going, who I was going to be
Yeah.
after high school, and I should have already been putting 4 or 5 years into building that up. And that's
Mhm.
wrong. Like the world that you enter into when you are 15, 16, 17 is not the world that you live in when you're 25, 26, 27.
Yep, that's what I'm coming
And
to
I'm
realize.
I'm beyond that. And so Luke got to realize a bunch of different things of, okay, yes, there is failure, but the failure doesn't define you. And even more so, this isn't your failure. It's your it's a relative's failure. It has nothing to do with you. And the overall message of Star Wars being that you are who you choose to be. Doesn't matter if you're born a random slave on a random desert planet, or if you are related to the formerly most powerful person in the entire galaxy. You are who you choose to be. And so that meant a lot to me. Again, this wasn't my favorite movie, but I really appreciate the lessons taught throughout it. And another thing is talking to people who, there's a lot of people who this is their favorite Star Wars movie. They were ostracized or cast out from their family for different reasons, and they found the family in others. And this movie means everything to them. And hearing them talk about it so passionately has changed my heart 1,000% on it as well. So yeah, I enjoy it. But now, all right. So we've gotten through the movies. We now have the entire Skywalker saga, and I can say the entire Skywalker saga because they're all dead. There's not gonna be there's no more blood. It's not gonna continue. You know what I mean? Uh, so anyone who's mad that Ben died, Miss Aggie, I'm looking at you in the chat. I'm not mad because they told us this was the end of the Skywalker saga. He was a blood Skywalker. He had to end. Anyways, now that we have this all, what can we take and put all together? Where's your overall takeaways or thoughts or my notes closed down? What did I say? Your thoughts on the entire theme of, what the light on family and on redemption. And I'll go to Cole first.
Okay, so first of all, you said what were you said the themes that we're gonna say here? Light, redemption, and what was that?
Or you can actually remove the light and replace it with the force. Right? We have the force, we have the family, and we have redemption.
Okay,
And
so
toss in legacy if you want.
okay, so first of all, with the the family and the fourth together, he has these great expectations because of the Skywalker name and because that coming in, Yoda and Obi-Wan know who he is or what he's supposed to be, and he doesn't. And it almost feels like they're trying to shape him into what he needs to be throughout the original trilogy. And while they're putting him on the right path, I wouldn't even agree with that. I personally tend to disagree with Yoda and Empire Strikes Back and in general throughout all of Star Wars prequels. I'm not going to go into that though. But yeah,
I
it's
would love to
just
broach that at some point, but yeah, not right now.
yeah. Um, it's just I like that Luke the whole time is just it's his story. He's trying to find his own path. And although he has people guiding him on the right way, well, they're guiding them. He's seeing the flaws in them and in himself and in all the people around him. And he's slowly breaking down what happened in the past and why he's on this path. And I like just how he is able to come full circle and realize I can step above my own expectations and of myself that I had, even stemming back all the way from A New Hope. His greatest expectation in A New Hope was, I'm going to go to the academy. And
Mhm.
here he is now at the end of Return of the Jedi, standing in front of the most powerful being in the galaxy, telling him to take his place. And he knows that his situation is almost hopeless, but now he's here in a place where he can say, no, I know who I am. I've gone on this journey and I want to stay in the light no matter what that means for me. I know my father uh, still has this in him, and this is who I am. I'm going to stay in the light. And that's one of the themes that's so great to me, which, like we talked about before, they were going to lead towards Luke going to the dark. I wouldn't have liked that, because I think it would have just torn apart that
Mhm.
the whole theme of his character is finding yourself. And in terms of the Force itself, um I don't have much to say there, because we all know his potential and his story. I mean, not his story, his family's bloodline, and how they have the highest midichlorian counts, da da da. But what I do like about the Force is the way that he progresses throughout the original trilogy. It feels, I know that he, at the end of A New Hope, he uses the Force to send a torpedo down a shaft and this and that, but it feels almost, his progression feels slow to me, especially as once we get into Dagobah. He slowly picks up subtle aspects, and I see this, a lot of people say with Rey too, that she's overpowered. I don't think so. I see with both of them, they slowly step into their abilities, and that's what I love. Is it's not just like this person can do all of this. It's they're finding themselves while they're also finding these abilities that they have,
Yeah.
which I've always thought was great.
Yeah,
And
it's oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
oh, no, go ahead. I don't have much more to say.
Well, it's always struck me that to me, Ray and Luke seem to be in a perfect amalgamation of Anakin wanting to go out and experience the galaxy and become this great warrior, but he loves his family and he always wants to protect them. Luke was all about, okay, I want to be just like my dad, and that turned into him wanting to be this great warrior. Ray was always, oh man, I want family and I want to belong and I want to know I belong somewhere. And it's splitting apart those two items, which I thought was I've always enjoyed myself. Um, but yeah, Max, your thoughts on them? I said the Force Family Redemption
Yeah,
slash
redemption is
Legacy.
a really interesting. Yeah, I think it's interesting looking at Luke's character in terms of like legacy slash redemption, because when it came out, no one had any idea what Skywalker meant. And now, 30, 40, almost 50 years later, Skywalker has become such a synonymous name with synonymous something grammar, a synonymous term with hope and balance and power. And I think what's so interesting is how the one of the cultural legacy has developed, but also how it's really only like 3 generations. Like
Mm-hmm.
Shmi Skywalker was uh, inconsequential, other than creating Anakin Skywalker, and Anakin Skywalker created the Skywalker name. So it's really interesting how it's had this legacy of a very powerful Jedi turned Sith, and how that has trickled into this family name, just in terms of canon. But what I always find interesting about Luke's arc and sort of Skywalker curse is something that Element has mentioned. What I think the Skywalker curse is how the Jedi consistently fail Skywalkers. I made a 10-part series on TikTok about how the Jedi failed Anakin, and just in general about the Jedi as this organized group. I think it's interesting how as you develop the idea of doing what's best for the Jedi sort of perverts and changes in all these different ways, because the moment that Luke failed in terms of like the Last Jedi is the exact moment that he realized he was about to kill his nephew for the betterment of the Jedi and not for the betterment of the universe. He was like, the only way to fix the Jedi is if I kill my sister's son. And I think that's where he realized, like, what am I doing? This isn't for the light side of the Force. This is for this whatever title of Jedi. And I think that's a really interesting thing when looking at the Skywalkers is how they change the word Jedi, and how Jedi have changed with the Skywalkers is something that's really interesting to me. And then what was the other thing you said? Family.
I mean, you don't have to comment on all of it, just whatever you would like or whatever pops off to you.
Yeah, that's a very cute dog. I think in terms of like family and redemption, that it's both the sense of identity is I make the Skywalker name what I want to make it. Luke changed the name Skywalker from being associated with Anakin turned Darth Vader to Luke Skywalker, and how Rey is going to change it to whatever she sees fit of I am not, like we said with the Rise of the Skywalker discussion, I am not defined by this legacy. I make what Skywalker needs to be for me. Yeah.
Okay. I like it. I'm for it.
Thank
I support it. All right. And Pep?
So I'm probably going to talk about all three of these concepts kind of like in tandem with each other. Before we had the whole saga, it was simply good versus evil. Like in terms of the Force, family, like, your father is evil, bring him back to good. And that requires him to redeem himself. And the Force is just the light side versus the dark side, good versus evil. And then the whole saga comes out, and you have the story of Anakin, and you have all of these nuances with the Jedi feeling Anakin and the Jedi feeling Luke. And you realize there's so much middle ground there that you just can't, you can't inherit such a binary perspective on the Force, family, and redemption. And I think because I don't want to talk too long about this, is the whole theme of the Skywalker legacy / curse is that they were always destined to struggle with the balance in general. It wasn't just the balance in the living Force or the cosmic Force. It was balance within themselves, because they were products of the Force. And that's why it makes so much sense that at the very end, in order to bring balance even further, is that the whole family had to return to the Force and become one with it. So I know, like you said, Choco, with Eggy, if you thought Ben should have lived, I'm perfectly okay with it, because that is in all honesty, if I had to sum it up, the legacy of the Skywalker family is sacrifice, and being products of the Force. It was only apropos that they returned to it when their job was done, and that was the end of the Skywalker legacy. And so having the whole saga there is just kind of like it's kind of like going into college and then going into your adulthood years, and just seeing so much more nuance than there was before, when everything was just black and white.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah. I mean, that hits deep, because for tons of reasons. I mean, when this whole thing started, that's what it was, is a simple black and white. And I mean simple as in the concept was stolen from old westerns, where the good guys wear white hats, the bad guys wear black hats, and that's how you know who's good and who's bad. When this started, Luke wore white, Vader wore black, good guy versus bad guy, light versus dark, good against evil. Very simple. But Star Wars is such a well-developed universe that it is you're pulling up these layers, and then you're like, well, what does it mean to be good? If you're being good to this entity, you're being good to that entity, and those things conflict, what happens? And that's what The Last Jedi was about. Is yes, if you follow what if you were trying to follow the Jedi and prevent the same issue that the Jedi ran into, you would kill Ben. But is it right? No. What do you do when two of your beliefs are diametrically opposed to one another? I don't know. It's tough. It's crazy. And apparently I'm being rated with a party of 9. I don't even know what that means, but
Viewers to your channel.
no, but it's interesting to me because this concept of I said the light because they were focused on the light side of the Force, but the way that Luke teaches Rey the Force in The Last Jedi is by far my favorite expression of it, because it includes the dark, and it explains that the Force is the connection between these two things. If you only have one, you will end up out of balance. And yeah, just the whole thing just really resonates, especially like you said, what was Luke's family legacy? Well, it was Vader. And also I hear people complain that Anakin's name wasn't mentioned in the sequels. Anakin doesn't exist in the sequels. No one knows who Anakin is. All the records of the Jedi, all of that history is lost. It was destroyed intentionally. We have Vader and the shadow of Vader throughout these sequels. And the question is, what are you going to do with that? And that's kind of the point, because when you look at history or legends, these are all things that are being passed down. I'm sure there's good and bad in all of it. So, for some people, maybe mostly bad. For some people, might be mostly good. But both exist. We still choose. It doesn't matter with legacies. We still choose what we carry forward, and that's the important part. And that's what I love. All right, sorry to go off on that big rant.
I loved it.
All right, so I have we'll end with two final parts, right? So first, we'll say, now that we have the entire saga, what has changed for you? And you have the stamp. You can greenlight any Luke project. What project are you greenlighting? Start with Max.
Oh boy. What has changed? I that's a really good question. I think I look at the name Skywalker a bit differently. I think with the context of like the entire saga, if we're talking from like 1 to 9, it's so much like more, and I think about it so much deeper than I ever need to. I like realize I'm at like 3 a.m. thinking about the context of Anakin Skywalker's creation. I'm like, what? I need to go to bed. But if I were to greenlight a Luke Skywalker, I would greenlight like a very short 90-minute movie, purely hand-drawn animation where it's just Luke becoming one with the cosmic force now that he's dead. Just like going through the universe and talking with the wills of the Force. I'm imagining something very much like the Beatles movie Yellow Submarine from like the 70s or 80s, where it's just like super trippy, but it's this beautiful conversation of like what the Force actually meant and stuff like that. That's what I would love to see. I don't need more action scenes.
You have just destroyed my mind with that. consider that as a possibility. But if
Absolutely. Same.
if you've read the from a certain point of view book, and then you read the part where Qui-Gon Jinn appears to Obi-Wan right before the events of A New Hope,
Yeah.
Qui-Gon knows Obi-Wan's going to die soon, and he knows he's going to be joining him in the Cosmic Force, but can't tell him, and is like trying to be supportive. Like, oh my god, that would just
There
man.
was a I don't remember if I think it was a book where R2D2 talked to the wills of the Force about the entire Skywalker saga in Legends, and I'm like, I would love that to be a movie, but just turn into Luke Skywalker talking to the wills.
Well, I need to reevaluate everything. While I do so, Element, your thoughts?
So what's changed? I think the one thing that's changed the most is me. The entire saga as a whole has changed how my outlook and my perspective on life, and just like I said earlier on, not to see so much black and white and to kind of pay attention to the nuance and the context of everything. In terms of like any Luke project, this is probably going to be the most generic answer you're going to get, and it's probably something that you have in mind as well, is just before the rise of Kylo Ren. Just we don't have that story, and people were mostly complaining about the sequels because we didn't get to see prime Luke. So like maybe a TV show or a long 10 movie saga about him after Return of the Jedi, training Leia, training all of his students, going on adventures with Lor San Tekka and finding all of these artifacts and exploring the lore. And of course, we see in the Jedi text that he's also exploring Sith artifacts as well. So we would get a healthy dose of lore on both sides of the front, and maybe see more of the Knights of Ren. Yeah, just the time period between Return of the Jedi and TFA is probably ripe with stories that could potentially be epic for Luke. Sebastian Stan plays him.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely.
And Cole?
So Element said that what changed for him was his outlook on the world. I'm kind of more of an inverted version of that. What's changed for me is my outlook on Star Wars itself. Because when I first saw it, I was just a kid, and it was like, oh, cool movie, epic spaceship, cool battles. Like, that was just my view of it because I was just a little kid. But growing up, watching it, I've come to realize that there's just so much more meaning and deeper value to it that I take with me that I just couldn't recognize then. So it's the evolution of the way that I can view Star Wars that's changed. But if I could greenlight any Luke project, I got two that I'm kind of torn between. One, I guess this also would sound pretty generic, but I'd like a Clone Wars-esque kind of show in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, just based out of the base on Hoth.
Okay.
Uh,
I like that.
because I'd just like to see almost, I guess you could call it filler time, but just I'd like to see more built up on the rebellion during the time of the original trilogy itself, not before the original trilogy. Also,
Real quick question though. I have to ask you: have you read Lost Stars?
no, I have not. Anything canon?
I'm sending it.
I
it.
haven't read it.
Bro, I'm gonna send it to you. Yeah. So like Lost Stars, and then the first Battlefront book, Twilight Company. Both of those especially have long periods of it where it takes place on Hoth in that time period.
Oh,
just
really?
like people being like, this friggin' sucks. Character gets drunk and gets led back. No, sorry, that's on the Starship. Yeah. Anyways, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Anyways, yeah, I have a more interesting proposal though. I know we have the comics going on right now that Element was talking about earlier, in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. But if I could retcon all of that, I'd like a movie or maybe a small 4 or 5 part show where we see Ahsoka meet Luke, and that could be the explanation to where he's come to more closure with himself and his power and the Jedi and things like that. Because to be honest, within the canon, I don't know much of what has gone on between the movies. So I'd like to see something like that, especially I'm thinking just more like this is fan service to myself, two of my favorite characters meeting each other. But yeah, I'd love to see Ahsoka give him some of the closure on that and some of the last of his training before Return of the Jedi actually comes and he goes to see Yoda again.
Yeah, that would be cool. I would also enjoy that thusly. And I'm sorry. And Max, did I hit you already?
Yes, you did. You're good.
Okay. Good. I forgot the very first time, which is very unusual. Um, I love. So we actually have Wednesday Pool in the list. His videos are awesome. Love him, but he's mentioned he'd love to see again the Tartakovsky animated show of an updated version of the Thrawn trilogy,
I just saw that.
which
Uh,
that would be dope. Because just that the animation style, like how just raw it is, and like I mean, I love that animation style in anything of all time. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that myself. Um, but my for me, again, you guys all have me in my feels and being all introspective and whatnot, which I love. That's actually where I live, so I appreciate it. Thank you. Um, I can say that what has changed is me as well. And your sometimes your views on what's right and what's wrong get inverted, or you get extra information from a third party and then you're like, crap, I've been wrong for years. You know what I mean? Like, have I really been missing out on this whole thing over here? um so that's what I really do appreciate. And um as far as if I could greenlight any project, I've said it multiple times, but I will continue to say it. What I want is I need a series, Clone Wars style, like where it's anthology style, but it is Rey looking at the Jedi texts with Luke's notes in them, and she is reliving those moments. So she turns to a point, and it cuts back to Luke going to this place and learning this lesson, and it's Luke in his prime visiting this random force sensitive group, or visiting this random temple that was written somewhere, and experiencing all this stuff and what made him write those notes in the book. That's what a whole series based off of just Prime Luke, but it's anthology, but it's always Prime Luke, and we get to meet all these other force sensitive like places and things and people and all this stuff.
I remember
That
this
would just be the best.
from one
That'd
of
be
your previous
beautiful.
episodes.
That would
I
be
think I
great.
called it like the Journals of Luke as read by Rey.
Yeah.
And now that it's been confirmed she has psychometry, she could go through those memories.
Relive them, yeah. And if we did so, then eventually we could get Rey restarting a new Jedi Order, but having learned the lessons that Yoda learned from season 6 of Clone Wars, where he had to face his own inner darkness, and having learned Luke's lessons. And so we might get a more perfect order, and then that more perfect order can go get up against the Yuuzhan Vong or whatever.
That
All
new
right.
Jedi Order is the Skywalker Order.
Oh, that's the other thing I want. The rank of Master has been replaced with the rank of Skywalker. I think Anakin would be stoked. All right. So that being said, all right. So is there anything you guys want to see going forward from Star Wars in general? And lastly, this is our conclusion. So anything you want to see going forward, and where can we find you? And I'm going to start with Element here.
Anything that I would like to see going forward, there's actually two things, one more important than the other. So the lesser important one is the sequels need their Clone Wars. They need an animated show that practically shows everything that we have gotten in small tidbits in like books and comics, and they need to give people 7 seasons to grow with Rey, because it did wonders for Ahsoka, and I think she needs that more important, most of all, to kind of set the groundwork for them to continue that story if they're ever going to do an NJO type of thing. But the more important thing that I want to see is an adaptation of the Old Republic. And I'll just, if you've seen my TikTok on my 20 movie saga, then you'll know exactly what I'm thinking about that. And I'll leave it there. The Old Republic needs to be adapted.
Yes, and I agree with that 1,000%. Basically, we need to get away from this trilogy mentality. The Old Republic cannot be contained in a trilogy. That's not possible. So go watch Elements, like his TikTok on it. It is even. It's a 20-part trilogy, or 20-part. I said trilogy. 20-part saga that goes into another saga of Bane. That's what I want. But I love it. And Cole, your thoughts on it?
Before I say anything, I'd like to say that I totally agree. The trilogies are outdated. The Star Wars, it needs to step into TV shows and almost like an MCU style kind of just ongoing storyline that you could push as many movies and shows into that you have to tell that story. But the projects that I'd like to see going on, number one, Rebel sequel. I don't know if anything's been confirmed about that or what, but I need closure on what happened to Ezra, and I need closure on Sabine and Ahsoka. And stemming out of that, I would also like to see an Ahsoka solo series.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the future of Star Wars is in TV shows, and
I agree.
I think it's away from movies. But yeah, and to reach me, I'm on TikTok at Master North.
Okay, perfect. And last but certainly not least, my inspiration, Kohm. Max.
That is so sweet. Oh my god, thank you both so much. What I want from Star Wars, I want two things. I want sort of like the Old Republic, but I want before that. I would love to see the canon beginning of the Jedi, or beginning of like the Jedi and the Sith conflict, like all the way back to the beginning. But I also want it to be juxtaposed with the very, very, very end of the Jedi. So like the actual last Jedi, the actual last Sith, the actual last conflict between these two, man-made sort of constructs, to sort of juxtapose both of them. One, to canonize both of them, because I'm interested to see how they would work with the beginning and the end. But also, I think those are the things that I'm the most interested in, is like the beginning and the collapse, and how we can sort of string everything together, from the Old Republic to the High Republic to the Clone Wars to everything like that. And for the sake of a joke, you can't find me. I don't exist. You can find me on TikTok at Kohm, Kohm.
I love it. I want to thank everyone so much for coming and jumping on this with me. Like all of you guys, I follow all of your content, and I love it. I know Max, you took a little break, and I was so sad when that happened. I wasn't really commenting or anything, but I was there, and it's a weird. So I'm also in a position where I've had people tell me like how much my content means to them, and it's weird to me. Like I'm not I'm just trying to be like Element. He was trying to do like Max. You mean like it's this awesome thing, and I'm just stoked that we can all at the end of the day we're all just nerds, just being Star Wars fans, and we can just talk and have fun, and that's just the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for coming on the podcast. I
Thank
Thank
had
you
a
you
for
so
having
much.
us.
Thank
Yeah.
you for having us,
hopefully
yeah.
I can have you guys all again, but may the force be with you always.
May the force be
May the
with you
force be
too.
with you.
Thank you, and
Beautiful.
you as well.